go. Okay, so welcome everyone to How to Tell Your Facilitation Has Impact story. I'd like to welcome in particular Lisa, who received a 2019 Platinum Facilitation Impact Award, and Lisa's kindly joined us tonight to share a bit about her experience with you as well. So I thought what we might do is, before we start, I thought we might just do some introductions, then hear some reflections from Lisa, then just open it up to questions and explore your questions. And then I've got some tips, just recapping at the end. So we're planning not to go for any longer than 60 minutes. And I'm also available anytime via email to answer any questions that you might have. So we might
also if after the session, if questions come to mind for people, feel free to contact me directly as well.
Oh, thanks, Lisa. That's great. So we might kick off with some introductions. So do I have anyone with a glint in their eye that I can invite to tell me your name, maybe where you're from, and a little bit just in a breath, what would make this session valuable for you?
Is my eye glinting?
Yes, Chris, over to you. Thank you.
I don't know if that's what an eye glint is, but hey. So my name is Chris Steele. I'm a professional facilitator. I'm in San Rafael, California, so the Bay Area right now. So it's about 6:30 in the morning here. And I'm actually, I've been up for a while. But yeah, so the Facilitation Impact Awards is my interest today. I'm actually going to be submitting one based on a client engagement in 2019. And I'm just eager to learn and optimize my ability to apply and kind of show my facilitation chops and learn from some of the best here. So that's what I'm here to do.
Great. Thank you, Chris. Anyone else with a glint in their eye? Paolo, welcome.
Ciao, I missed the beginning, sorry.
That's all right, we've just started. So we're just doing introductions, your name, where you're from, and what would make the session valuable for you today.
Okay, I'm Paolo Martinez, I'm calling from Italy. I'm the current IAF Italian chapter leader after Gerardo, who is here. Ciao, Gerardo. And I'm interested in understanding the process, and we have some specific questions because we would like to also submit a proposal.
Okay, great. Thank you. Anyone who would like to go next? Anyone with a glint?
I'm Andrea. I know very well Gerardo and also Paolo and Monica. And with Paolo and Monica, we follow the process of participatory process, a community of practice process, and we like to submit the proposal. So I would like to know better. And I already sent some questions to Julia. So also Paolo had to know.
Great, thank you. Next.
So I'm either Italian, so I am Gerardo, yes. And it's 3:30 here, so it's right after lunch. I'm here because I'm a board member, and I am really interested in seeing what's going on. So because I'm doing the same sort of stuff and meetings, and I'm interested in understanding what's going on.
Great, thanks, Gerardo. Next. Kevin,
Hello.
I look like Eva, I can see a glint in your eye, and then we'll go to Kevin.
Yeah, actually,
Okay.
Kevin and I are working together in a team. We are from China, and actually I am a beginner in the facilitation world. I started to learn facilitation 3 years ago, and now I'm on the way to apply to be a C certificate professional CPF. And at the same time, since we are working in a team in some projects, we use facilitation, and that's why we're interested to know what are the rules and ways to get the impact award. So this is always a very interesting topic to me. And when I browsed the IAF website the other day, I think the day before yesterday, I noticed that there's a webinar. And so that's my interest.
Okay. Great. Thank you. That's awesome. And as we move through the session, you'll see that there are some close connections between the Certified Professional Facilitator certificate and the award. So we'll talk about that. Kevin, are you ready there?
Yeah. Hey, Kevin, how should I say? I'm from Toronto, Canada, but I live in and work in China, Beijing, many years. Yeah, I learned facilitation many years ago, but I never applied CPF. And then from last year, because I deliver a TOP program in China for 4th year in a row. And also I know lots of CPF. They all encourage me to apply for CPF as well as this Impact Award, because I have so many facilitation programs. So yeah,
that's great.
And then I said, yeah, I take a look at this this year and see what's going on, whether we can do it together. Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Kevin. That's great.
Thank you.
And Monica, are you?
Okay. I'm working with Paolo and Andrea for Emilia-Romagna region, and we worked last year about on 2 projects, training project, and okay, and sent you 3 questions, and I'm waiting for the answer. Yes.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much. All right, great. So nice small group, so it'd be good to just have a free-flowing conversation. So I might ask Lisa to introduce herself, and just we might hear some reflections from her, and then we'll just go into a question and answer session. Lisa, welcome, and thank you so much. It's early in the morning for you, and I know you're very busy with client work.
It is, thank you. So if I'm hearing you correct, Julia, I'll introduce myself and then just kind of highlight a few of the things. Do you want me to highlight a bit of my process and then how I did it, and then a bit of what my reflections were? Would that be helpful for people? Just to kind of get a sense?
Yes,
okay.
I think that would be great, yeah.
Okay. You didn't give me a time limit, so I will do what I want. No, I'm kidding. We'll do this briefly so that people questions. Lisa Pearl, I'm a certified professional facilitator. That was kind of the first step on the journey of really recognizing that facilitation was a profession and something I really was already doing and really wanted to solidify my work and my experience and my background. I'm from Calgary, so it's 7:30 a.m. here. I've been facilitating probably informally for, I don't know, maybe 8 to 10 years. And then, like you said, just realized I'm actually doing something that's kind of got a profession around it, and so went on to pursue the CPF, and was really excited when I got that. So in terms of this particular session, I had to remind myself what I did because it was over a year ago, but it was a leadership session. Essentially, it was a client I'd been doing other work for, actually had done some facilitation work for, had created a communication strategy for the leaders. I did some meetings training with them because they really wanted to improve their meeting culture as a whole. And so they were doing a leadership retreat, and what they really realized is that they had 3 levels of leadership. They were spread out across the country. They didn't feel like they were a team necessarily because different layers of leadership, they didn't see each other that often. They worked remotely. There had been huge growth, so lots of new leaders. So they were saying, the HR person said, listen, like I could just create a competency model or we could have a facilitated conversation as part of a leadership retreat to really talk about leadership. So it was a really meaty session. So I was very excited about it, a little nervous because it was everybody from frontline to the CEO, but really excited about it. So a couple of things for me. The session A went really well. All the tangible and intangible outcomes were achieved. The CEO made a point of saying something during the session to recognize the work and to say he was just shocked how far people were getting and how he really saw the leadership team come together. There was a lot of really heartfelt moments where people said, wow, like, I really feel I'm part of a team. I feel like we've really talked about what leadership means to us and where we want to take it. So I was pretty excited at that point and thought, and the other piece of this is I realized that it was a meaty session, and I had done quite a number of different techniques and approaches. So I used TOP, I used ORID, we did a carousel walk. I actually created an exercise at the end where they pulled everything together in this sort of flurry of shapes and using the sticky wall, and they came up with a conceptual leadership model. So I felt there was so much accomplished, and that there was a variety of techniques used, and it was a meaty enough session that I thought, I've heard about this impact award. I'm wondering if it's something that would match, that it's suitable. So the first thing I did is go to the guidelines. The guidelines outline really well what you need to consider. I think what was surprising for me is that, thank you. I think what was surprising for me was that I was ready to sort of apply right away. So this session was in March, I think, and the deadline was in May. So I was ready to, okay, I'm going to apply. But what I realized, and I think I might have had a conversation with somebody at IAF as well, and maybe Julia, it was you even, after looking at the guidelines and having a conversation, I realized that I was going to, even though I achieved the outcomes, we achieved the outcomes of the session, and it had, it was a meaty session and using the competencies of the facilitator. What I realized is that there was a piece in there in the guidelines around the qualitative and quantitative impacts. So I went, oh, well, I'm not sure that those have happened yet. So that made me realize that I actually needed to wait a year to see for the next submission period to actually see that the session had made organizational impacts over the long run. So I went to the client. I actually sent them that last year. I actually sent them the guidelines and mentioned that I was thinking of putting us forward. And one of the selling points for sure for the client is that they get a ton of recognition through this. So they get an award, they get a ton of recognition. And this was a group that was really high performing, and they had already won actually with the communication strategy I helped them with, they'd won a communication award through one of the communication associations. So they were actually quite motivated to go ahead and go ahead with the award. So that was the first learning, is that even though I was really eager and I thought, well, I want to do this now because it's in my head now, I realized through the guidelines that really I needed to wait a year to see if that session had been a catalyst for organizational results, qualitative and quantitative, through the year that I could talk about in the application. So that was one learning for sure. So
that's great. I'm just trying to get I'll deal with my technical issues and you keep talking. That's all very valuable information. Thank you,
sure.
Lisa.
And before I talk about sort of what was the process in terms of what did I do the next year, should I talk about reflections? Why did I do it in the first place? So one reason is, why did I want to do this in the first place? So a few of those reasons I mentioned: really meaty session, felt it turned out really well, felt there was a lot of impact, but also even starting the application process, because I pulled it out early, the application early, to sort of start to look at, what needs to be in there. It really forced me to reflect on and reinforce the competencies. So by even starting the application process and looking at it, it reinforced, wow, when I look at our core facilitator competencies, I really tapped into those and I really used those. So that was a good reflection and reinforcement as well. So I'll take a breath in terms of the process itself. So I'll talk a little bit about what I did and how long it took me, if that's helpful to people. Would that be helpful to people? Little nods? Okay. So I'd already set the stage with the client immediately after the session, essentially within that month, to say, hey, thinking about this impact award, here's the guidelines, what do you think? We need to wait a year. Can I come back to you and bug you a year? Because actually my work with that client had finished. So I needed to warn them, I'm gonna come back and bug you and say, how is this, how did this impact the organization? And we're gonna talk about this award again. So they had a bit of that hat on even through that year before I came back to them, knowing that I was going to come back to them and ask them about actual quantitative and qualitative impacts to the organization. So I went back to them I'm just looking at my notes. I think it was in March, it might have even been February, where I reminded them, hey, we're moving forward with this application. It's in May. Here's a reminder of the guidelines. It's going to take some of your time as well. I actually didn't realize how much time it would take on their part, but I knew it was going to take some of their time, as well as mine, and that they needed to start gathering or thinking about what were the impacts post-session, qualitative, quantitative, for the leadership group. So that's the first thing I did. And then I literally started filling in the application in a rough way, but I thought that was the best way for me to see where there's some gaps, what was the client going to need to participate in, what could I do? Because there were certain sections that honestly the client wouldn't do at all in terms of lining up to the competencies and my professional background. But definitely one of the most points was for the impact. I think it's 55 points or something for that the impact that it had to the organization. So I knew that to get quantitative and qualitative results, I was really going to need to tap into the client. And I was that they had done some measurement things and done some work to be able to quantify that, and they had. So I started that in March. So I got them a draft, and of course they were super busy time for them, and just started the process working a draft back and forth, really highlighting for them what sections they needed to be focused on and where I really needed their input. So the submission itself is fairly long, so I didn't want the client to feel overwhelmed that they need to do all this work. So I really sort of said, hey, this is yours, can you add some comments here, etc. It would have, I'm estimating, but I think it was about 40 to 50 hours of my time, probably 10 to 15 hours on the client time. And that was with me really managing it for them so that they didn't have to do a lot of anything extra. And I was really focused on where their work was. Is that surprising to anybody? Is that kind of what you would expect? Feel free to comment.
Yeah, just that's a little bit high, but yeah, that makes sense that you would put that level of detail into it. So I appreciate that it took that much time.
Yeah, I was a bit surprised how long it took as well, but I I wanted to make sure I didn't miss anything. I'm very, I have a high level of blue in me, a little bit of those detail oriented. And I really wanted to make sure I followed all of the guidelines and that I really completed the work and didn't leave anything out. So in terms of quantitative and qualitative, they had done really good work. So they had done engagement surveys from the leadership, engagement surveys from the teams, and they noted increases in percentiles for all of those. They literally rolled out the leadership competency model and the leadership statement and the work that we had done at the session. So there was definitely qualitative results. From another qualitative perspective, which they were surprised at, leaders were actually taking it upon themselves to take more leadership training. So they had offered some leadership training, which leaders were signing up for, and in fact saying, hey, I can't make it, can you record it and make sure that I get that training? But on their own, they were signing up for and doing their own leadership work. So there was a lot to say that session was a real catalyst for them to truly focus on leadership and their abilities and the importance of leadership and working with their teams. So there was a lot of really good, both qualitative and quantitative results that I think strengthened that application a lot.
Might be a good spot to just pause there, Lisa, and ask if anybody's got any questions about that, because I think, you know, it definitely is the thing that is really important to have, is the measures, because it's the Facilitation Impact Awards. And so what we're actually looking for is demonstrated impact. And so one of the things that some submissions sometimes do is they think by quantified results, we mean just numbers. So the impact is not about the number of workshops or the number of people. It's, as Lisa said, it's about what's the before and after shift that's occurred, what's the change that's actually occurred. And Lisa, the other thing that you mentioned there that's really relevant to that is that it's about making sure that you nominate at the right time and that you've had time for the impact to be shown or for the results to come through. So has anyone got any questions about that? Because it is very important, as Lisa's highlighted.
I have a question.
Yep.
Okay. Sorry to be so talkative. So I've kind of already prepared my submission and I've gone through it, and it's good to hear the validation. And Lisa, you're giving me some good perspectives. In the context of quantified results, my submission is based on strictly business development. So marketing and sales and top line results, because that was really the nature of the project. Mm-hmm. So when it comes to quantified results, there's only a couple. Frankly, there's two, which is growth and actually database development, pipeline development. Is that enough? Are those 2 points enough to actually show the impact in this context? Or because there's a whole bunch of qualitative results, I got a whole page of qualitative.
Yeah. Okay.
But when it comes to quantitative, there's only a couple metrics, really.
Yeah. So when the guidance that we give, I'll just maybe get. Sorry, I've got a few pages. I'm missing that one. So what the evaluators do is they assess impact. Oh, sorry, it was the page I was on. They assess impact against the stated objective for the project. So in section 2 of the nomination form or the submission form, you're asked to provide in the project overview a clear and concise project objective. And then when you come to section 3 and you to do the quantitative results, it's just about being able to draw a connection between what you're measuring and what that objective is. But another thing that sometimes happens is that people, if you write lots of objectives in that statement, you need measures for all of them. So what the evaluators will do will say, well, there's 3 objectives and they've demonstrated impact on one of them. And it's a score out of, 25 points. So if you have 3 objectives, You have to measure, you have to have impact against 3 objectives. If you have one objective, it's, well, what measures would indicate impact against that one objective? So that's why it's really important to make sure that you have a very concise and clear statement of what the objective is in the project overview.
Wonderful, thank you.
Any other questions?
Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry, just any other questions on quantified results? Because it really is, Lisa's hit the nail on the head. It is the key thing that's very important to have.
Well, allow me to, I mean, I'll go ahead and forgive me. If somebody else has a question, please go ahead. I'm sorry, I'm kind of a gabby guy. But let me put it out there and then sorry to, but one of the things it says in the, in the guidelines for quantification is we look at the points, you get 4 points if no quantified results were provided, 10, 15, 25, and it goes down the docket.
Yeah.
So the biggest number of points is the quantified results demonstrated that the project objectives were met or succeeded. In my case, I'll just put it out there, we had a metric of 75% increase in top line revenue, and we almost got there. We reached a 90%, which was not quite achievement. So I get the impression then that even though we did a really good job, I won't get the full 25 points because we didn't get 100% of the goal. Is that a logical thought process?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So can I just check, you can see that slide, organisation impact, yeah? Is that, I'll just check. Yeah, okay. All right, and so if I just flick back here, so Lisa also mentioned that it's 55 points in total. So the quantified results against the objective are 25 points and the qualitative results are 15. So qualitative results just mean, you know, comments or feedback from people, but there's no hard numerical measure in there. You know, it might be, as Lisa said, the leaders in the organisation were giving really positive feedback. So it's important, even if you have quantified results for the objective, it's also important to include the qualitative results as well. Lisa, what was your next point?
Well, I would say make sure with this that respect your client's time. They will need to contribute to this process. And, you know, for me, their contributions were, you know, there were particular sections where I really needed them to tell me the impact that it had. It's not me telling the impact because they're at their organizations for that year after the session and are able to articulate that. I mean, certainly I gave them guidance, but, you know, it was really for them to gather that information. And, you know, I wanted them to be comfortable with the application, so they needed time to look at it and run it through. If they had some approvals, if they, you know, they're going to say what's confidential and what's not. So they needed to feel really comfortable with it. So I did not want to jam them. So I made sure there was plenty of weeks in that time frame. As I said, I kind of started in March and the applications the end of May, I believe. So there was, regardless of how much time I needed even if I could put my 40 hours in 1 week, I recognized that between their meetings and other things they had going on and the information that they had to gather, I had to give them more weeks and more flexibility. So, you know, and I didn't want to give them, you know, a ton of drafts back and forth. So I really limited that. I think it was a couple of turns, and then they had the chance to see the formatted, nice, pretty version and to say, okay, you know, any last comments? Is there anything in here now that you're looking at it that you might say, that's a bit confidential, don't necessarily want that on the IAF website? You know, they had a chance to think through that. So that's just a caution to make sure that just because you might be able to pound it out in straight 40 hours or work a weekend or 2 weekends and get it done, they need some sync time. And they need time to gather the information because this truly is a mutual sign of success. It's for the organization. You know, in my case, my tax was very, very excited. They did a we did a session, you know, recognizing the award and the leaders. So they, you know, it was truly part of their organizational success, and that's what it's meant to be. So I treated it as such throughout the whole process. And just in case you need some motivation, I thought I'd do this little motivation there.
Oh, nice.
Oh, sorry, I've missed your screen, Lisa. Were you showing them your award?
Sure. Yes, I
Award,
was.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, that's great. Right. I seem to have lost my controls altogether, but anyway, does anyone have any questions for Lisa?
Yeah, I have one. Do we need to provide supporting material, say, or just we get the after they have done their work and they give us the numbers and the comments? Do we need any material to support that?
No, it's just the application. As far as I recall, Julie, if I have this wrong, let me know. But I do very detailed facilitator scripts. So I was able, for me, to pull a lot of content from my scripts into the award. And then I had to do a lot of think through in terms of how it matched the competencies. I did include some pictures from the session as part of the, and there is a spot in the award application for you to include pictures. Julia, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think there was any kind of attachment. It was just the award, the submission itself, and you could put pictures and logos, etc., within the document.
Yeah, so we do sort of provide for you know, you can include some photos in there, and if you include them, we'd publish them on the website if you are successful in receiving an award. But all of that material, when we advise people if they're going to receive an award, we give you all the material that we're going to put on the website, and you clear it for us. But you can include there is a page limit on the application form. And I'll just see if I can, I might just bring up so the application form does have a page limit. Now, and it is important, I know Lisa's mentioned how much time that she put in her application or nomination. And I think you'll find that rather than that generating a lot of material, it was very concise and very clear. And so the evaluators only have the nomination form and what you write in it to assess against the criteria. And so it's important that, you know, it's sort of a catch-22. You're trying to you're trying to sort of show a lot of information, but it's important to do it very concisely because there is a page limit.
Yeah,
so,
thank you.
Yeah. So,
and that is what took that did take a good chunk of time. That did take a good chunk of time because I had lots of material, and just to kind of trim it back to the most important facts. That's probably one of the biggest chunks of time.
Wonderful.
So most of the sessions I've had with past awardees, they've always given that same tip that Lisa's given, which is to spend a lot of time crafting your messages. And then most of them also recommend that you then leave it for a few days and come back and read it again. And also getting someone else to read it, as long as they're not an evaluator or me. But it is really about, you know, you can see their project objectives. You know, we're looking for a very short, concise statement of what the purpose or the goal or of the project was. We don't want pages and pages of information on that, because then it becomes hard for the evaluators to assess the extent to which the objective was met. Yeah. And then you can sort of see that the nomination form is very structured against the criteria with instructions about the type of information that the evaluators will be looking for. It's useful to not delete the instructions because it's helpful for the evaluators as well. So please don't delete the instructions. But Lisa, I think it'd be interesting to talk a little bit about what you said about the facilitation competencies, because this is one area where there are a lot of them. So
for me, it was a couple of things. It was really going back through not just the session, but all the work I had done up to the session, because some of the competencies are related to that. So how I had created a session flow document in advance, and how I had built relationships and partnerships with the client, and how we went back and forth, and how I surveyed the participants before we even got to the session. So I had to go back, not just for, look at the actual session and the results and I do very, very detailed scripts. So I did have quite a bit of information in terms of the approaches and that information. But I actually had to go back to the starting of the planning of the session, and because some of those competencies are related to how you develop relationships with the client, how it was a working partnership, how you map them through, how you helped get to mutually agreed upon outcomes. So I had to do that work. For this particular session, I had a co-facilitator. So that helped in terms of, she read, as Julia said, she read the application as well, the submission form as well, so that she went, oh, hey, don't forget, we also did this, or, we were really strong here. So it was really good to have that fresh set of eyes. But yes, in terms of the competencies itself, I had to literally go back to kind of day one and go, how did this session come to be? How did I use the competencies to even get to the session in the first place? So I had to think about all of that, because the competencies relate not only to the session itself or the day of the project itself, but also to the processes and your work leading up to the session as well.
Yeah. And that section for the competencies, it can really only be completed by the facilitator, because it's about what the facilitator did to demonstrate the competencies. And these competencies are the same competencies that are used for the Certified Professional Facilitator credential. And so you can see here, build and maintain professional knowledge. So that's about, well, what does the facilitator do to demonstrate that competency? So there are quite a lot of them, and it's very important to address them at what we call this sub-competency level. So C1, C2, C3. You can see there's 4 points available for competency C. And in the guidelines, there'll be the scoring framework that says how the evaluators will allocate points based on the extent to which you demonstrate against each one of those. And so, as Chris said, there's a sliding scale for that. And it's very important, as Lisa, she mentioned nice practical examples of what she was doing against these competencies. So generic statements. So for example, a really good one is if we go back to the beginning and it says develop working partnerships under create collaborative relationships. Generic statements like the facilitator developed a good working partnership with the client, it is too generic. What the evaluators are actually looking for is the facilitator developed a working partnership with the client by, and then outlining the things that the facilitator did. And this is where, you know, you don't need to go into minute detail about what they did, but we're looking for good, concrete, practical examples of the behaviours that demonstrate that the competencies were being practiced. Any more questions? I know.
May I connect to the impact question? As the examples you are, first of all, congratulations. It's a great job and chapeau.
Thank you.
Yes, and I can understand there is a lot of work behind, because of course you have to do a kind of retrospective after years sometimes, and to measure the impact. The examples you are bringing are mostly related to company situations where the quantitative dimension probably is easier to measure. Do you have examples also of policy related or governmental situations where, of course, the quantitative aspects may be related to, they may be harder to measure because of their the way in which they are measured within the organization. So because we are reflecting on exactly that. That was one of the questions, Andrea, no? The first one especially. Can you point it out?
Yeah, so I've just gone to, hopefully you can see the IAF website. So if you go to the IAF website and under news and events, you'll see Facilitation Impact Awards.
Yep.
Here. If you go to that page on our website, there's Lisa and my tax. So they're all the awardees from 2019, but down here, historically project summaries for every project that's received an award since 2013. And over time, 2013 to 2015, the awards were just for the Americas, and the criteria was refined in 2017, so there were some changes here. But if you click on these, this site, what you'll be able to see is the awards that were given in that year. And then you can click on that and see who the client was, who the facilitators were, what the impact was, how it was measured. So Lisa's mentioned before how they measured the impact, what the context and challenges were, the project objectives, and a little bit about the approach. So for every project that's received an award, you can find that information or go through and have a look at them. There have been, there are government projects, business projects, not non-profit projects. There was a project, I think in 2017, I think maybe, which was for Little Helper or Helper City in Utah. And it was about reinvigorating a city that had lost all its employment. So there are examples of how policy shifts. So there was another example where a community rallied to have a law changed. So the change that they wanted to see was the introduction of this law. And so their objective was to change the law, and it resulted in the law being changed. So, you know, that received an award. So the projects are very diverse. The objectives are very diverse. It definitely, the measures definitely don't need to be about money or profit. It's about the extent to which you can measure that facilitation contributed to an impact of making a shift from a current state to a desired future state.
Thank you very much. And do I understand well that as the impact can be measured sometimes over years, is there a kind of time limit on after which one can submit or not submit the Facilitation Impact Award, depending on when the event or when the process happened?
Yes, it's 24 months.
24 months,
So,
okay.
Yeah, So I'll just show this one. So I'm hoping that you've got that. So nominate at the right time. So as Lisa mentioned, you know, I think you waited a year, Lisa?
I'm taking a picture. I did wait a year, yes.
Yeah, yep. So, you know, you set your project objective, you have your facilitated processes, then there's a passage of time before the impact might be realised, and that's 24 months. Now, at least one facilitated process was held in the past 24 months. That just has to be one facilitated process associated with the project. So we've had projects, the full duration of the project was 3 years. So they set the objective, they had the facilitated process, and then for 2 years they had check-ins and follow-ups. So it only needs to be that at least one facilitated process was held in the last 24 months, but the project itself might have been going on for 3 or 4 years.
That brings up a good point, Julie. I think it's really important that you choose a focus. So I was lucky in terms of mine was a sort of shot in time. It was part of a broader retreat, but it really was, I could really zone in on the leadership competency component and how and test the results against that. Anything where there's multiple facilitations over periods of time, I really recommend that you choose a focus of something that can be measured and something from that project. I think if you choose the whole project and it's multiple facilitation and multiple, you will spend more time on the application because you've really got to zone it in. So my recommendation would be really choose an area of focus where you could show a strong case that the facilitation, whatever that was, served as a catalyst to achieve some core quantitative and qualitative results.
So I did receive some questions via email. I might just, I don't, Paolo and Monica, Andrea, do you have them handy? Would you like to ask them, or would you like me to get back to you separately on them, or?
I suppose we can ask here.
Yeah.
I think the first question that was about the numerical measures used for the first organization impact. I think you answered before, so okay. I think I have to study better the cases that are on the site. So.
Yep. Yeah.
The second question, maybe you answered before, but my internet connection is unstable, so maybe I read again. Was about the in our process we gave a very importance to explanatory videos. So I mean, if possible, to put some link in the submission. Or to give them visibility in the proposal?
It would sort of depend, like what would the video be doing? Like what does it show?
Yes, the video were some recording of the performance of the participants at the facilitation process.
Okay.
So
Yep. Yeah, as long as it's not like, so evaluators have limited time. They do a lot of these and they have to do them quickly. So as long as it's a, short video, it would just add context and would help the evaluators sort of understand, what it looked like in practice.
And I would add, make sure you have the client approval for that. I've taken video at sessions and sometimes they don't, like, it's just for them. They don't really necessarily want it shared. So.
Yeah, okay, okay. For example, we have a video that explain how participants learned public speaking or like to work together. So it's a short cut video, so could explain better.
Yeah, as long as it's not, well, and so you would have to, it would just be a link and you'd host the video somewhere and just give them a link. That would be fine. Yeah. Okay. But they will base it would just be contextual information for the evaluator.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And the last question I sent you, was about the our process was a blended process. So half online and half on a face-to-face meeting. And so we like to describe the online tool, and I asked you if it's possible to put some graphic about the structure of the online tool, or if you have some suggestion to explain better these tools, because it's difficult. The proposal is very very fixed. So yeah, I ask you if you have some idea.
So can you see the document, the submission document, or are you still seeing a slideshow? What's on your screen?
Slideshow still, Julia.
Okay. Yep. Sorry. I'll just switch. I've got. I'll just share with. So here in the nomination form, when you get to the so this is the nomination form. When you get to section. So there is a page limit, remember? So when you get to here, this is the end of your page limit, and then you have a declaration. It's very important here to fill this in, and you're sort of stating that you've got permission. You can highlight any information that's confidential, and someone needs to fill this in, either yourself or the client. And then here in the attachments, you can add, other photos or things that you might want. So you can add. So these pages don't count for your page limit. So you can put some images in there, if you like, or if you've got space back in the main body of the nomination, you can include them in with the text. It's where you like. But again, just bear in mind that the reason we have a page limit is to help you create a concise story. Because the evaluators can only evaluate what you've written, and so concise, to the point text addressing the criteria and the information that is requested for the evaluators to interpret. Yeah. Any other questions? We're coming up close to the half hour. Oh, that's a cool song, but maybe
that's a good song. It's worth it. Yeah.
I was just thinking somebody's given me an awesome ending where we could all break out into that song. Listen, just while you're thinking, if you have some final questions that you would like to ask, I just would like to explain how the awards or the nominations are evaluated. So it is a peer evaluation process. So IAF members complete training to use the scoring framework that's in the guidelines. So again, a good tip from Chris, start with the guidelines in Appendix 1. There's the scoring framework. So we train the evaluators in how to use that framework. And they also make a declaration that they'll assess the nominations fairly and consistently with that framework. Evaluators are allowed to be included in a nomination, but we have mechanisms in place to make sure that evaluators don't evaluate their own submission. But as I mentioned, the only information that they have to assess your nomination is what you put in the nomination form. So very important to invest in that. For each submission, we allocate 3 evaluators. They come from all over the world. You can submit a nomination in English, French, Portuguese, or Spanish. and we have evaluators that speak each of those languages. I'm sorry, we don't have Italian. And what happens is each evaluator scores the submission against the framework independently. Then we add up and get the average of the 3 scores. And if the spread in points, so in this example, if one evaluator gave a submission 82 points, another one 71 and another one 65, the spread between these scores is more than 15 points. So if that happens, the 3 evaluators meet and talk about the reasons why they gave the scores and try to understand why there were different views about what the scores were, because they're all using the same scoring framework. And then the evaluators score the submission again independently. Then we average the score to get the final score. There's no appeal process. It's the evaluator's decision is final. If you receive 70 points or more, I'll just go back up here. Sorry, there we go. If you receive 70 points or more, you receive a silver award. If you receive 80 points or more, it's a gold award. And if you're like Lisa and receive 90 points or more for your submission, it's a platinum award. If you receive less than 70 points, we will automatically give you a copy of the final average score so that you can see how the evaluators evaluated your submission. So
Julie, I do have a hard stop, Eddie.
Yep, sure. Well, thank you so much, Lisa, for joining us and for your tips. And how would it be best for people to contact you to take you up on your offer if you do have any questions?
Either connect with me on LinkedIn and DM me, or feel free to share my email address, Julia.
Okay, all right. So LinkedIn for Lisa, and or if you're interested in emailing her, if you send me an email at the email address you'll have already from me, then feel free to do that. Lisa, do you want to drop off now and I'll just wrap up quickly, or can you hang around for another minute or two?
I think I need to run.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Big round of applause for Lisa.
Thanks. Nice to see everybody.
Thanks.
Thanks, Lisa.
Yeah, so just quickly, some tips here for telling your story. Read the Facilitation Impact Awards. It's got the eligibility rules, criteria and scoring framework. Nominate at the right time, so enough elapsed time for the results to be achieved and for you to have measures for each objective. Provide the requested information, concise project objective, clear statement of organisation in scope. I might just say something quickly about that. In the project overview, we ask you to define the organisation in scope. So if, say for example, you work for a big corporation and the project was for a division or a branch of that organisation, when we assess the extent of the impact, which is worth 15 points, the criteria is the proportion of staff that were involved or impacted by the project. So, you know, it's not fair if it's a massive corporation and it was a branch or a division, it would make that percentage a very small number. So it's important to sort of define that the organisation in scope was, what it was, whether it was the whole organisation, a branch or a division of the organisation. And there's some guidance on that in the guidelines and also in the nomination form. Concise responses to each criteria, quantified and qualified results for each objective, and nice specific examples for each sub-competency, and ask someone to do a fresh eyes review of your submission is always very useful. So any final questions? No, all quiet on the Western. And as Andrea, we spoke about this, the link, there's the website reference there to have a look at some of the past projects that have received awards.
I just want to say thank you, Julie, for this. This is educational and enlightening, and I think I'm ready to submit a great award proposal.
We look forward to receiving it, Chris. Any final questions before I thank you all, and especially Chris, you know, I think you win the award for the earliest start time. And I'm not sure, Chris, our other Chris, I'm not sure what time it is for you. Chris Steele from San Francisco, it was 6:30 when we started. So any final questions? If you do have questions, it's a bit like exams. Whenever I used to walk out of them, I always used to think, oh, I should have asked this. If you're feeling like that, you can get my email address. It's fia@iaf-world.org. It's on the website, and you would have received an email from me for this session. Feel free to email me, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Yeah. Thank you.
Great. Looking forward to seeing all your submissions.
Yeah. Get back to work.
Thank you.
Yeah. And good luck.
Yeah, good luck and thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Julia.
Bye to all.
Stay well,
Julia.
everybody.
Thank you, Julia.
And you.